let's start at the top of the 2022 NBA draft. Matthew Pennie, you have done intrepid reporterly work into this. And by that, please, for the love of God, do not aggregate this. We are not like this. Matt knows some things, but like, and I know some things too, but like, God, we're not like serious when we say that.
Amongst friends.
Yeah. Okay. Pennie. Paolo, when Paolo goes number one, like, what is your immediate thought?
Surprise, shock.
Yeah.
Despite the Vegas lines, I thought it was like somebody weird set like a bad bet and the motherboard went nuts, but they were right, which is just completely insane to me that Vegas scooped everybody. Vegas scooped Woj, which doesn't really happen. And then it like
which by the way, like
re-scooped, and it was just all the scoops.
So Ben, I believe Ben Fox over at Vecenie wrote about this, and the first surge on Paolo, it would seem, was essentially just value based. Like they thought Paolo at 12-1 was way too high, and it got bet down. And that this was Sunday going into Monday of draft week. It just got bet down. Like it was not a situation where there was inside intelligence, apparently. Now, I'm a little bit skeptical on the second surge where Paolo became the favorite on Wednesday going into Thursday morning. And then Woj tweets that it's Jabari Smith, Chet Holmgren, Paolo Banchero, 1, 2, 3 is still the anticipation. And then the market obviously reacts to that, and it's Jabari Smith at -900, I think, going into 7:15 before the draft, so 40 minutes before the draft. It's nuts. Like I do wonder if someone found something out the second time, the Wednesday going into Thursday surge that made Paolo the favorite before the Woj tweet that made Jabari like the -900 favorite.
And Paolo was plus 2,600 like a month ago. We were all dumb. We should just bet on the top three guys. Why wouldn't we do that? Anyway, so for Paolo Banchero, for his camp and his representation, they didn't know what was happening until 7:40 that night and had final confirmation about like 7:50, 7:53. He did not visit Orlando. He did not work out for Orlando. He met them once for an interview in Chicago, then did a follow-up call or Zoom or something along like the lines of that. And it just takes such stones by the Orlando Magic that they kept their move so close to the vest. They believed enough in the tape that he was going to be their guy. Was him not going there part of the plan? Some elaborate smokescreen? Maybe. Who knows? Was it to leverage for more picks and he was still their guy and they'd go down at 2 or 3? Maybe. Who knows? I find it interesting, though. This is also the second time in as many years that the Magic have drafted a player in the lottery that did not work out for them prior to being drafted. He joins Jalen Suggs in 2021 because Suggs kind of fell into a lap, slid a little bit. So I went back and on the broadcast, now knowing what we know about the behind the scenes, it was this cool, surreal moment between Paolo and his draft table when his name was called. And he was like legitimately surprised. He knew 10 minutes before that, but still, it's like, I can't believe I'm going first. They weren't necessarily prepared for that. And you can see the surprise on his face. And even when he's shaking the commissioner's hand, giving him a hug, taking a picture, that he can't believe it. He's just like in shock. And people close to the situation tell me the day before the draft, Chet Holmgren and Jabari Smith Jr., all the people around them, they were just as much in the dark as we were. Apparently not the bettors in Vegas who adjusted lines like that. So thank you for the drama. Thank you for the theater. And this is why I love the NBA draft so much. As much as you think you're prepared and we say there's not going to be too many surprises, we at least had a huge surprise go first overall for Paolo Banchero to the Orlando Magic.
Yeah, and I kind of want to talk about the lack of surprises throughout the rest of the draft later on, but we got the biggest one. Like, that's the coolest thing in the world to me. Yeah. That like Orlando was able to keep this thing quiet. And I've seen some people in the days following saying they don't understand why Orlando felt the need to keep this as secretive as they did. Like, were they playing 4-dimensional chess when a normal game of chess will suffice, right? And look, I think it's valuable to keep your intentions secretive at the end of the day. I really do. I think that other teams not knowing what's going on is an institutional advantage for you. Now, The reason for that is you never know what the other teams are going to want until you get the intel on who they want. It seemed like throughout the course of draft week, the week before draft week, Houston was pretty set on Paolo, which meant that if they moved up to 1, they were going to take Paolo. If Orlando by that point decided that Paolo was not their guy or was their guy, then Houston, they had to stay ahead of Houston basically. And then with Oklahoma City, was it possible for them to move back from 1 to 2 to pick up additional assets? Probably not. It seemed like Oklahoma City was just pretty set on Chet, and they felt pretty good that Orlando was not going to take Chet at the end of the day. So, yeah, I think that had the circumstances been a bit different and Houston, for instance, maybe would have liked Jabari Smith more, or Oklahoma City would have liked Jabari Smith more, there would have been a real advantage to sliding down the board and picking up an additional asset, in large part because nobody would have known what you were doing. It just ended up in this circumstance that there was an even top 3. Houston had evaluated the same guy that Orlando did to be the best guy, it seems like. And then Oklahoma City knew that both Houston and I don't know if they knew Orlando liked I don't know if they knew Orlando liked Paolo or Jabari Smith, but it felt like Oklahoma City felt pretty good that Chet was going to fall to them at 2. And because of that, there was no value to be had. But this could have gone a different way, and there could have been value to be had, which is why there is value in keeping it secret up until the moment where it goes public.
I don't think it really benefits you to have it out there, unless it's a leak to throw everybody else off the scent. You're not great. So they know what you're doing at 1. You take away any leverage you have on maybe a free agent or another pick you're trying to get out of it. And one thing, too, I didn't project Paolo going first. I think very few, if anyone did. There hasn't been much of a backlash for him going first in the media. It's not getting blown up like, oh, the pick was Jabari. It should have been Chet. People have just collectively shrugged and said, yeah, he's really good. Like, I get it. I understand. Like, first pick overall. It wasn't one of these things where Anthony Bennett gets read first and people are like, oh my gosh, wow, how did he go first? Like, he's not. Paolo's a really good player and had an incredible season and run to the end of the year and is right there in that first tier. So there wasn't just this outcry from basketball people that like Orlando missed. They liked their guy. They honed in. They kept it quiet and ultimately got their man first.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we talked about, in the week leading up. Like, these guys are all equal. Like, they're all so close. You can make a case for all 3 of them. The fact that me, Jeremy Wu, John Gavoni, John Wasserman, X, Y, and Z, right? We basically all had it as Jabari going 1.
Mm-hmm.
I felt pretty bad about that. Like, I didn't love the fact that we all had that, but like, also the intel is the intel at the end of the day, right? And like, you base it off of what you've been told by, agencies, by, people in the NBA, various different people surrounding it, etc. Right? So the fact that all of it was consensus, 1, 2, 3, Jabari Smith, Chet Holmgren, Paolo Banchero, and all of the mock drafts that you saw that are, relevant and everything, right? Like, these are, I felt bad about that, I guess is what I would say, because I felt like consumers were not getting a real picture of how close this was to teams that actually had to go through the process themselves.
We did everything we could here.
We tried so hard. We tried so hard.
Especially down the stretch, but go back if you want to do the cold takes exposed or whatever. I had all 3 guys at 1 throughout the year. Say it's a huge cop-out, you idiot. Sure, I'll own it. But I started with Paolo. I went and saw Jabari. That probably clouded me because I actually saw him in person shooting over the top of guys. Okay, he's number 1. And then I settled on Chet. It was like, even so, I think before the season I had Chet. I watched some Paolo. I said, ooh, Chet's not ready. Paolo, Jabari, then back to Chet. And I've been in pro Chet for, I don't know, a few months here now. But it's not a crazy difference between the guys. It is how they play and their style of play. But in terms of pure talent, and we've also shortchanged Paolo a little bit, saying like he's the most far ahead of these guys, so he doesn't have more to go. I think he does have more to go.
Yeah, I
Does
agree.
he have as much to go as Jabari Smith? We haven't seen as much off the dribble creation, aside from that like one dribble left spin back jumper. We haven't seen Chet be able to play through contact, so we just assume it's there. Well, Paolo's done a lot of things well, but only shoots 34% from three. That goes up.
Yeah.
He removes that hesitancy. He moves his feet better in space. Why can't his ceiling be the highest? So I'd also,
Yep.
he goes number one. It's like, guy's productive, but he's not going to get there. He could get there to the same place that Jabari and Chet could. I value Chet and Jabari more than him, and I did have Jaden Ivey ahead of him too. But for Orlando, I get it. If you think this is going to be the top shot creating scorer, best guy to build around to be a playoff team and winning playoff series, then you take them. And they've trusted their evaluations throughout the process.
Yep, that's totally right. Let's go to the second two teams here, the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Houston Rockets. It just seems like Oklahoma City was settled on Chet for reasons that I felt like I talked about on the post-draft show. If you want to go listen to that, I think that he's just such a perfect fit for the way Oklahoma City is one to play under Mark Daignault. It just seems like all parties there were like, let's get Chet to Oklahoma City. It's the perfect fit. It will allow him to come along slowly. It's a perfect fit in terms of style of play. And everyone just kind of was very happy with the result there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I listened to the Sam Presti introductory press conference of these guys. They asked about Chet. They asked about Oklahoma City's process. And he said what stood out to him the most was they went and watched him practice and kind of spent a day around it. They want to see how he interacted with his teammates because you're this much heralded freshman that's younger. It's a veteran group. And how are you within those guys and them kind of knowing like he's a top 3 pick, he's going to be here for a few months and take off. And the number one thing they said was he belonged. He looked like he was just one of the guys out there. And then he played. And I was like, ooh, this guy can actually go, and he'll play within the team construct. He'll throw it in the post to Drew Timme. He'll cut away. He'll set his screens. But he knew those moments where he's actually able to show the fully actualized Chet. Oklahoma City knew if they put their arms around it and made it more that than opposed to the complementary piece, they potentially had a star in their hands. And that's why it looked like he was at the top of their board. If they had 1, 2, 3, they were taking Chet Holmgren.
Yeah. And look, at the end of the day, you and I both had Chet at number one. We really believe in him. We believe in the human being. I think that's what it comes down to for the two of us. We genuinely just believe in that motherfucker.
I hope. And our boy Andrew Schlecht was at media day and asked him something about his weight. And are you tired of hearing about the muscle and putting on weight? And Chet said something a good answer. It was 2 minutes. He's like, I don't really pay attention to those talk shows that have nothing else to say. I hope we weren't one of those talk shows because I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be looped into this. I think we've been beyond kind and believers that Chet's body is going to fill out. And it's not going to be as much an issue as made out to be.
Yeah, no, it might be an issue, but he's going to get the absolute most out of it, whatever it is. I have zero doubts in that human being at the end of the day. Right. Whatever he can do to fix it, he's going to fix it. Maybe he doesn't have it in him, but I'd rather bet on the guy that I know is going to do every single thing imaginable, possible, point blank period in order to make it happen. Because, at the end of the day, you're betting on humans here. And when you're having to draft teenagers, 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds, in Keegan Murray's case, 21-year-olds, these guys are unfinished products. They're unfinished human beings. And it's tough, I think. So let's go to number 3 with Houston. I think that Houston probably is a little bit surprised by this, at the last minute. They certainly had contingencies, I'm sure, but I would imagine they were the one that came off most surprised at the end of the day.
Most surprised, and maybe still the best fit. And that's why I think Houston is one of the winners of the draft beyond the Tari Eason pairing too, is that I love this pick becomes just cleaner because the two guys off the board ahead of them, and it made the decision for them in a sense. But Jabari Smith is a catch and shoot, defensively versatile forward that fits with Alperen Sengun, then also fits in the front court with Tari Eason. Had a Ben Paolo who shot 34% from the college 3, it's a little murkier. Paolo is going to get his buckets. However, those much needed Jalen Green and KPJ driving lanes become a lot more congested. So I don't know if Houston was probably like setting up their offense in their head, believing what Paolo Banchero would look like within their personal team constructs. You have to throw all that stuff out the window, but it's not completely back to the drawing board because the main strength of Jabari Smith is shooting, it's floor spacing, it's stretching it out, and that's something that their backcourt needs desperately too.
Right, and in the case of Orlando, looking at Paolo Banchero and the fit there, I mean, we haven't really talked about Jalen Suggs all that much. You and I both love Jalen Suggs. Like, we're huge fans of his and think he's going to be a stud. Like, this is the kind of thing that can really help Jalen Suggs be brought along at the end of the day. Having a guy that can be a legit pick and roll partner. They can hopefully use Wendell Carter as like a floor spacer in the corners. They can, run these 1-4 ball screens with Jalen Suggs or 2-4, whatever position you want to call Jalen. And it's going to be really hard. If you drop him, Jalen can kind of turn the corner. He can throw it back to Paulo, who can pick and pop. If you switch it, I mean, good luck trying to stay in front of Jalen Suggs. Like, it's kind of it. And then Paulo's going to murder switches. So like, it's hard. It for all of the advantages we talked about with Jalen Green, and Jalen Green's a little bit more complete offensively right now than Jalen Suggs is, obviously. It's going to boost Jalen Suggs' development along in just as much of a way as it would have boosted Jalen Green's.
And think, too, the one thing I'll add with Orlando is think of Franz Wagner in that Michigan-y type roll off the ball in the corner with those sneaky back cuts, putbacks, the short rolls into touches going somewhere else. You'll have to pick how you defend that. But, if it's a switch and then Suggs going downhill, you hit Wagner, he makes good plays off the dribble. They become a lot more interesting to watch, too, in Orlando.
Yeah, no, that's totally right.